The technician leaned closer and whispered, "Cancel your cards, change your passwords, and run." Those were the first words that began to destroy the life I thought I had. My name is Linda Harper, and until that morning, I believed I was living the quiet, ordinary dream of retirement in Austin, Texas. My husband, Charles, and I had spent over 40 years building a home filled with books, laughter, and Sunday breakfasts. Our only son, Ryan, had always been our pride. He was 35, successful in finance, married to Claire, a polished young woman who worked at a consulting firm downtown. They had good jobs, a beautiful apartment, and every reason to be happy, or so I believed. That Wednesday, Claire showed up at our door alone. She looked anxious, clutching her phone like it was something fragile. "I accidentally dropped it this morning," she said with a forced smile. "The screen shattered. I need it fixed by tomorrow. It's urgent." Ryan was away on a business trip, or so she claimed. I could tell she was in a hurry, her eyes darting toward the door every few seconds. I offered to help. I knew a small electronics shop in the old part of town, Eddie's Repairs. Eddie was the son of an old colleague from my teaching days, reliable and kind. Claire seemed relieved. "That would be perfect, Linda. You'd really save me." She handed me the phone. "The passwords are anniversary date June 18, 2018. Thank you. I promised to bring it back before evening." Eddie's shop was tucked between a bakery and a thrift store. It smelled of solder, dust, and old memories. When I walked in, he greeted me warmly. "Mrs. Harper, long time no see. What can I do for you?" I explained about Claire's broken phone. He said it would only take a few hours. I left the phone with him and went to run errands, thinking it was just another ordinary day. When I returned that afternoon, Eddie wasn't smiling. His face was pale, his hands trembling slightly as he gestured toward the counter. "The phone's fixed," he said quietly, "but there's something you need to see." That was the moment my world cracked open. Eddie motioned for me to come closer. His voice dropped low, barely a whisper, as if the walls themselves might be listening. "Mrs. Harper, I don't want to alarm you, but when I repaired the phone I noticed something strange." He turned the screen toward me. A hidden folder appeared, tucked deep inside the files, disguised under the name budget_reports. Inside were screenshots, voice recordings, and messages. The first one stopped my breath. "Ryan, she's been forgetting more lately. The doctor's notes will help prove it." "Claire, good. Once everything is signed, we'll move forward with Plan B." "Ryan, I hate waiting." "Claire, be patient. It has to look natural." I felt my knees weaken. Eddie pulled over a chair and urged me to sit. I read line after line, watching my son's words sink like stones into my chest. They weren't talking about a business deal. They were talking about me. Another message appeared, dated just a week ago. "Ryan, insurance company confirmed the policy's active. We only need the doctor's confirmation." "Claire, perfect. Don't forget to switch the pills. She takes them every night, right?" "Ryan, yeah, she won't notice." Eddie looked at me uncertain. I could tell he had debated whether to show me or not. I asked him to make copies, every single message and recording. My voice shook, but I forced calm. "Can you send them to my email?" I asked. "And please don't tell anyone about this yet." He nodded quickly. "Of course. But Mrs. Harper, promise me something, act normal. Don't confront them until you're safe. Whoever wrote this knows exactly what they're doing." I walked out of the shop with the phone in my hand, the world spinning around me. The afternoon sun was too bright. The air too heavy. People laughed and talked on the street, unaware that one woman among them had just learned her only son might be planning her death. I pressed the phone against my chest and whispered, "No one will believe this. Not yet. But I'll find out the truth." And from that moment I knew nothing in my life would ever be the same again. I don't remember driving home that day. The streets blurred together, and the voice in my head kept repeating the same line, "My son wants me dead." When I walked into the living room, Charles was sitting in his recliner, watching an old western. He looked up and smiled, completely unaware that our world had just been set on fire. "You're pale, honey," he said. "What's wrong?" I didn't answer right away. I placed the phone on the coffee table, opened the screenshots Eddie had sent, and simply said, "You need to read this." He leaned forward, frowning as his eyes moved over the messages. At first, confusion, then disbelief. Then, finally, something broke in him. "No," he whispered. "Not Ryan. He wouldn't." But the evidence was there. The same Ryan we'd raised, the boy who built tree houses and kissed us goodnight, had written words that sounded like a stranger's. Charles's hands clenched into fists. I could see the rage fighting against heartbreak. How long do you think this has been going on? I shook my head. I don't know, but look. I opened the bank app on our tablet. A series of small transfers appeared, 500 here, 200 there, always to the same hidden account, all authorized by Ryan. We went through every document, every insurance file we had, and there it was, a new life insurance policy under my name, forged with my signature, listing Ryan as the sole beneficiary. Charles sat back, his face drained of color. That's not our boy anymore, he said quietly. That night we canceled our cards, changed every password, and locked the checkbooks away. Then we sat in silence. I stared at the framed photo of our family on the mantel, Ryan, his arm around Claire, both smiling wide. I remembered the day it was taken, how proud we were of them. Somewhere along the way, that love had turned into greed. I turned to Charles. We can't just hide, we have to be smart. He nodded slowly. Then let's start with the doctor. If they'd been using him, he'll know something. And so, with fear in our hearts but fire in our veins, we began to plan our quiet fight for the truth. The next morning, I called Dr. Collins's office and asked for an immediate appointment. He had been our family physician for more than 20 years, a man we both trusted completely. If Ryan and Claire had managed to involve him, I needed to see it with my own eyes. When I arrived, Dr. Collins greeted me kindly, but there was something uneasy in the way he avoided my gaze. We exchanged polite words and then I asked, straight to the point, I'd like to review my medical file. He hesitated. Of course, Mrs. Harper, give me just a minute. He disappeared into the back room. When he returned, he placed a manila folder on the desk, but his smile faltered as I opened it. My hands trembled as I scanned the pages. There, in neat type, were words that didn't belong to me. Patient exhibits early signs of cognitive decline. Reports of forgetfulness and confusion as observed by son Ryan Harper. My stomach turned. I flipped through more pages. Each line suggested I was slipping into dementia, all based on statements from my son. Doctor, I said quietly, did you ever test me for this? Did you ever see me confused? He swallowed hard. No, but Ryan insisted something was wrong. He said you'd misplaced medication, left the stove on. He asked me to keep an eye out. I closed the file, my voice trembling but firm. Dr. Collins, you've been deceived. There's nothing wrong with my memory. But if you don't correct this record, that lie could have cost me my life. He went pale. Mrs. Harper, I had no idea. I'll fix this right now. He printed a new page and signed it. Patient shows no cognitive impairment. Previous notes based on misinformation. I thanked him, then asked him to keep quiet for now. As I walked out, I could feel my pulse pounding, my anger sharpening into focus. They weren't just trying to take our money. They were trying to erase me one fabricated symptom at a time. But I wasn't losing my mind. I was wide awake. That afternoon, my phone rang. Ryan's name flashed on the screen. Hey Mom, his voice sounded overly cheerful, like a salesman rehearsing kindness. How about dinner tonight, just the four of us? It's been too long. I hesitated, then agreed. Sure, sweetheart, I'll make your favorite roast chicken and mashed potatoes. When I hung up, Charles looked at me. Are you sure that's a good idea? It's the only way we'll know how far they're willing to go, I said. And before they arrived, I slipped Charles's old voice recorder under the table. It was small, black, and silent, just like the truth we were about to capture. They showed up right at 7, carrying a bottle of expensive wine and a box of chocolates. Claire smiled, but her eyes didn't. You shouldn't have gone through all this trouble, Mom, she said sweetly. You should rest more. Ryan poured the wine himself, insisting on serving our glasses. I noticed he poured ours first, then theirs, switching the bottles as he did it. Subtle but deliberate. As we sat down, the conversation felt rehearsed. Mom, Dad, have you thought about downsizing? Ryan asked casually. You know, that big house must be a lot to manage. Claire nodded, adding softly, we could help with the paperwork. Maybe get some documents in order just in case something happens. Something happens. Those words echoed like thunder in my mind. I kept my smile steady. That's kind of you, but we're fine for now. Then Ryan slipped. The doctor's concerned about your memory, Mom. You forgot Mrs. Langley's name last week. remember? I met his gaze, calm and cold. Mrs. Langley moved to Florida 6 months ago. You told me that yourself? For a second, silence filled the room. Claire's fork froze in midair. Charles cleared his throat, breaking the tension. So, Ryan, how's work? Ryan forced a laugh, changing the subject, but I saw the flicker of panic in his eyes. They finished dinner quickly, claiming they had an early morning. As the door closed behind them, I turned to Charles. You recorded all of that, right? Every word, he said, pressing the stop button. And that was the night I stopped being afraid. I was ready to fight. The next morning, I was sipping coffee when the doorbell rang. Charles was still upstairs shaving. I opened the door to find Claire standing there, dressed sharply as always, holding a neat stack of papers and wearing that polite, polished smile that never reached her eyes. Good morning, Mrs. Harper. I just wanted to drop off some documents for you and Mr. Harper to review. Nothing urgent, just standard paperwork, she said smoothly. I invited her in, pretending not to notice how her eyes darted toward the living room camera that wasn't actually on. She laid the documents on the coffee table, aligning each page perfectly as if rehearsed. Charles joined us a few minutes later, towel around his neck, pretending to act surprised. Claire handed him a pen. Oh, you don't need to read every page. Ryan already went over the details with your lawyer. I smiled gently. Humor me, dear. I'm old-fashioned. I like to read before I sign away my life. Her smile faltered for just a second. I began flipping through the pages. The first was a general power of attorney, granting Ryan full control over our finances, medical decisions, and assets. The second, more chilling, was a voluntary admission form for a long-term memory care facility. My hand tightened on the page. I looked up at her. Claire, what exactly is this for? She gave a practiced little laugh. Oh, just in case. You know, life can be unpredictable. I nodded slowly. Of course, life can be unpredictable indeed. I placed the papers back on the table and said, we'll look these over and get back to you. Claire's eyes narrowed slightly, but she stood, smoothing her skirt. Of course, take your time. When she left, I locked the door and exhaled. Charles picked up the documents, his jaw tight. They're getting bolder. I nodded. But now we have proof of intent. Every move they make is another piece of evidence. We scanned and photographed each page, sending copies to our friend Marianne, the retired librarian who had always been meticulous with records. The game had changed, and for the first time we were no longer prey, we were building a case. By the next morning I knew we couldn't keep this quiet anymore. What Ryan and Claire were doing had gone far beyond family betrayal, it was criminal. Charles and I drove downtown to meet a family attorney recommended by Marianne. Her name was Julia Reynolds, a sharp, composed woman in her 40s with kind eyes that didn't miss a detail. I handed her the folder we'd prepared, photos of the phone messages, the forged insurance policy, the fake medical notes, and now the power of attorney documents. Julia took her time reading every page. When she finally looked up, her tone was calm but firm. Mrs. Harper, Mr. Harper, you're both in danger. You've been systematically targeted for financial and medical exploitation. She began typing immediately, preparing legal revocations for every document Ryan had ever touched. Within an hour, she filed the necessary motions to revoke his access to our accounts and invalidate any medical authorizations. Then she leaned forward. I'm contacting Detective Henry Morales in the Elder Crimes Division. He's one of the best. This goes beyond fraud, it's attempted murder. Hearing those words made it real in a way nothing else had. I felt my throat tighten. Detective Morales arrived that afternoon, tall, calm, with the quiet authority of a man who had seen too many families broken by greed. He listened, reviewed the evidence, and nodded. You did the right thing coming here, he said. Here's what we'll do. We'll install discreet surveillance in your home, cameras, microphones, the works. You two act normal. Whatever they plan, we'll capture it. Charles reached for my hand. What if they don't take the bait? Morales smiled faintly. Then you'll be safe. But from what I've seen, they're close to making their move. That evening, technicians arrived under the guise of internet repairmen. Tiny cameras were placed in the kitchen, the dining area, and the living room vents. As night fell, our once peaceful home transformed into a quiet stage for a terrible truth waiting to unfold. Around 9 p.m. Ryan called. His voice was casual, but beneath it I could hear tension. Hey Mom, we're stopping by tomorrow night. I have a surprise for you and Dad. When I hung up, my heart pounded. The trap was set. Now, all we had to do was survive the performance. The next day passed in agonizing slow motion. Every sound made me jump, every creak in the floorboards felt louder than usual. I kept checking the tiny indicator light on one of the hidden cameras, making sure it was still recording. By sunset, the table was set. Charles had opened a bottle of wine, our own, sealed, untouched. I made sure of that. Then we waited. At 7:42 p.m., headlights swept across the driveway. Ryan's car. Claire stepped out first, holding a gift bag. Ryan followed, his expression rehearsed into something that looked like affection. "Mom, Dad, surprise. We thought we'd make it a special evening." I smiled, forcing warmth into my voice. "How thoughtful of you." As they entered the kitchen, Ryan asked for 2 wine glasses. He carried their bottle, different label, already uncorked. Charles and I exchanged a glance. The detectives, parked in an unmarked van down the street, were listening through the microphones. Ryan poured generously, setting our glasses in front of us. Claire chatted cheerfully about vacation plans, real estate prices, anything but the tension that hovered in the air. Then it happened on the counter camera. Ryan's hand slipped something small into the wine. He thought no one noticed. I forced myself to sip from my own bottle, not his. Charles did the same. When Ryan lifted his glass, his eyes flicked toward mine, searching, waiting. "You two have been the best parents," he said softly. "I hope you know how grateful I am." The words made my skin crawl. I smiled back. "That means a lot, sweetheart." Minutes later, as Ryan excused himself to the kitchen, a faint knock sounded at the front door. Claire froze. "Who could that be?" she asked. Before anyone could answer, the door burst open. Detective Morales and 2 officers stormed in, badges raised. "Ryan Harper, you are under arrest for attempted homicide. Step away from the counter." The look on Ryan's face, pure shock. Then rage will never leave me. Claire screamed, backing into the wall, as the officers cuffed them both. From the doorway, Morales nodded toward me. "We've got it all, Mrs. Harper. Every frame, every word." And for the first time in weeks, I could finally breathe. At the station, Ryan sat across from Detective Morales, handcuffed and silent. Claire sat beside him, pale and trembling. The room smelled faintly of disinfectant and betrayal. Charles and I waited in the adjoining room, watching through the one-way glass. Morales began calmly, laying the printed screenshots, medical files, and video stills on the table. Every piece of the puzzle, every lie, every moment of calculated cruelty. Ryan tried to speak first. "It was just a mistaken experiment. We weren't really going to." Morales cut him off. "Then why did we find oleander extract in your bag? Why did you falsify insurance paperwork? Why did you drug your mother's vitamins for weeks?" Ryan's eyes flickered toward Claire, but she was already crying. Then she said the words that twisted the knife deeper. "It wasn't his idea, it was mine." Morales leaned in. "Go on." She confessed in a halting voice how she'd studied toxicology in college, how she'd used an old inheritance scheme from her past to get close to Ryan. She'd convinced him that killing his parents was the only way out of their financial troubles. Ryan's face crumpled. He turned to her in disbelief. "Claire, what are you?" But the damage was done. Morales signaled the officers and they escorted Claire away. A week later, the investigation reopened one of her old cases, an uncle who'd died suddenly under mysterious medical conditions. It turned out she'd changed her name years ago, after an insurance investigation in another state. Ryan, realizing he had been manipulated all along, confessed fully. He pleaded guilty to attempted murder, accepting a 20-year sentence. The day of the sentencing, I stood in the courtroom, my hand gripping Charles's. Ryan looked at us, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry, Mom. I don't know who I became." I wanted to scream, to cry, to ask why. But all I could manage was a whisper. "You were my son before greed took you." And as the officers led him away, I knew the truth was more complex than good and evil. It was about weakness, temptation, and the slow corrosion of love when money takes its place. 4 years passed. Time has a strange way of dulling pain, but never fully erasing it. Charles and I sold the big house on Elm Street, the one that once echoed with Ryan's laughter. We moved into a small apartment in San Antonio, near the park where we used to take him as a child. Most mornings I sit by the window with a cup of tea, watching the sunlight stretch across the trees. There's peace in the ordinary now. We volunteer at the local community center, teaching seniors how to use computers, helping kids with homework. Life has found a quieter rhythm, one that doesn't hurt as much. Ryan writes from prison every few months. His letters are long, remorseful, filled with reflections about the choices he made. He's studying law now, helping other inmates with their cases. Some days I answer, other days I can't. Forgiveness, I've learned, isn't a single decision. It's a long road you walk barefoot. Some days you bleed, some days you heal. There are nights I still wake up reaching for the sound of his teenage laughter, remembering birthdays, Christmas mornings, the smell of pine and cinnamon. Then reality drifts back the wine glass, the lies, the betrayal, and I breathe through it, one memory at a time. But I've also learned that revenge doesn't have to end in anger. True revenge is survival. It's reclaiming your peace after someone tried to destroy it. Sometimes people ask if I'd ever take Ryan back when he's released. I tell them I already have in my heart, not in my home. Because love doesn't mean surrender. It means choosing freedom over pain. When I walk past the mirror each morning, I barely recognize the woman staring back. She's older, yes, but stronger too, wiser. And if you're watching this, if you've ever felt trapped in a web of betrayal, listen to me. Protect yourself. Trust your instincts. The quiet voice inside you is never wrong. The greatest victory isn't revenge, it's peace.